I can tell you there are, it's amazing, 185,000 charities. Many, of course, focusing on exactly the same areas. A good few thousand for cancer research. I think there are 500 charities dealing with the homeless in London alone. Either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your perspective. The trouble is, if you're one of the smaller charities, if you're not one of the big half a dozen or so, if you're not the British Heart Foundation or Cancer Research or Age UK or Alzheimer's Research or all those that are top of mind, what do you do? What do you do if you're a charity that's there to look after people in a very specific area of your community with needs that they have, or some of these rare medical conditions we hear about from time to time? It's almost impossible to raise funds. As I said earlier, I'm running another half marathon race this year, and I was looking at charities to support. It's part of the whole thing, and you realise there are thousands that they send you a list of here are charities that would like your money, and you don't know where to begin. I found a charity called Luciere Ambulance, never heard of them before, desperately in need of funds. They provide much needed transfers for children from intensive care from one part of the country to another. Brilliant work they do, and yet they're desperate for money. Here, Oxfordshire Charities now finding it increasingly hard to raise money, even with so-called professional fundraisers on board. Like Base 33, they closed before Christmas because they said raising money is the hardest they've found since the recession in 2008. Reverend Jason Boyd talked to me earlier. He was involved in some of the brilliant work that they were doing at Base 33.
Well, initially it was meant to be a 3-year project, and there was a grant of £25,000 that was given. So it started very small with a single youth worker, and that was in 1998. So we did quite well to go through almost 2 decades, but by the end we were looking at quite significant costs, around £150,000 a year to employ all of the staff that we needed to do the work that was required.
And you just couldn't find the money. How far short were you?
We could find money for projects because people in general quite like to donate to specific projects. The difficulty for us was finding what are called operational costs, trying to get the money to do the day-to-day sorts of running, like lighting, heating, paying people's salaries. That's the hardest bit. And, of course, there's less and less money out there. So more and more charities are chasing after funds.
What do you do if you're a small charity and you desperately need those pennies? The Good Exchange is a new organisation that tries to match up people who want to give with those who desperately want to receive. Ed Gairdner is its chief operating officer. He says the current system just isn't working.
There is a problem, and I think what the Good Exchange is doing differently is it's bringing the grant making, so i.e. the larger amounts of money coming from either from philanthropists or organisations, along with public donations. And because we're focused on the local community, it's imperative that the local community get in behind that local project. The match funding grant, where money is given on a £1 to £1 basis, enables the public to get in behind it. It's the reverse crowdfund. It is the grant that drives the crowdfunding activity.
Number of charities in this country is going up by 5,000 a year. Charity Commission lists 620 cancer charities alone, 200 working with homeless. I think I said 500 working with the homeless in London. In total, 185,000 charities. Here's Mandy Johnson, who's Chief Executive of the Small Charities Coalition. They have 8,700 members, all uncertain about their future. Morning, Mandy. Are there too many charities in this country, do you think?
No, not at all. I think most of the organisations that are setting up at the moment are setting up because they see specific need that's not being addressed, and that's the only reason they're setting up something new. I also think that the figures that you're dealing with are probably a little bit out of date, because there are lots of charities that are sitting dormant on the Charity Commission's register, and the Charity Commission hasn't cleaned that up. So we guess that there's probably at least 10,000 charities that have closed, but just haven't told the Charity Commission about it. So the number of charities could well actually be reducing. We just don't have the data to prove it.
So is the Charities Commission fit for purposes? We need to know, don't we, how many charities are actually operating at any one time?
Yeah, I mean, the Charity Commission's predominant role is to regulate the charity sector, and they are fit for purpose in doing that. They also manage this beautiful bank of data, and they're under-resourced when it comes to maintaining that. You know, they absolutely need more investment from the government too.
So these smaller charities, many of them are your members. Can they survive, or are they finding it really difficult?
They're finding it incredibly difficult. Over the last decade, we've seen increased regulation, decreased funding, and an increased complexity of need that they're having to deal with.
So what needs to change?
What needs to change? We need more support for the smaller end of the market. So the charity sector as a whole is actually growing, but the vast majority of that growth is going to the big charities that you mentioned earlier. So we've seen charities with a turnover of 100 million growing faster than they have done for a very long time, whilst the small charity sector is reducing. So we need more help for smaller local charities.
And if you are a small local charity, the problem is how do you manage to get yourself heard above the noise? I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah, it's incredibly challenging. And what we've seen are the charities that are bucking the trend and managing to thrive are collaborating with others to make their voice louder. They're using volunteers as much as they possibly can to spread the word, and they're embracing digital technology to get the word out in any way that they can.
Interesting. Mandy, good luck with the work you're doing. Thanks for coming on this morning. Mandy Johnson from the Small Charities Coalition. If you are one of those small charities, good luck with your work this year. Not easy, I know. 16